Welcome to Advanced Nurses. We connect with nurses who inspire other nurses by sharing their experiences. And so we're able to bring that information to you.
Hi, I'm the educational consultant with Advanced Nurses at ACD4N, and today I have Miss Lesline Pittman, and I'm just so excited to talk to her about what she has been doing around working with not only mothers but women in general around just work-life balance and the work that she has actually been focusing and how it's transformed her life and the way she views how she can make a difference in the world. So I just want to thank you for your time. And would you mind giving me like a brief background of, your nursing background and also what you're doing now, what led you to what you're doing now?
Yeah, so thank you so much for having me today. I appreciate it. And yeah, so my nursing background, I've been a registered nurse since 2014. I started in the cardiac realm, and then from there went to med surg. From med surg, I worked nursing homes, did home health, then did ICU, then did case management, and now I work in utilization management. So that is a very brief rundown of my nursing career. And a couple years ago, well, not a couple, my goodness, my daughter is now, how old is she? She's 5. So when my daughter was born, I had some postpartum. It was like baby blues, where I was just, very concerned about my mental health postpartum and didn't realize that postpartum baby blues would affect me in that way. And I like to say that because I know it sounds ignorant, but being a registered nurse, you're always like, oh, that's the patient, not me. And then I turn out being a patient, And so I say all that to say I reached out to a therapist. I got therapy, life coaching simultaneously, and I transformed my own life. All while doing that, I then became certified as a yoga instructor. All of this is taking place during the pandemic, where I know a lot of people were suffering, with the pandemic, and also nurses working in the hospital are going through a lot, but I was actually going through a metamorphosis of my own. And so after doing all that, I was like, I want to help other moms like me, because I felt like I was in such a dark place and I finally saw the light. And that's how Lesline Does Wellness was birthed, was through my own pain. And now I help new moms find their way.
Is just phenomenal. Just because I know for me, I had a really little one during the pandemic. I decided to take time after giving birth to kind of just focus on being a mother. I, kind of put off starting a family till like my late 30s. So I was kind of one of those advanced age moms. And so there was a lot of concerns, I guess, the doctor was having around me being quote unquote advanced age. But shortly after I had my son and I decided to stay home. And then like shortly after that, maybe like a year and a half later, then we had the pandemic, right? And so I continued to stay home with him. I was really concerned and fearful about having him out. But like to something you pointed out, I also did note that I had some postpartum blues. Interestingly enough, having a child at home with me was kind of like a reality check that I just didn't have that kind of freedom that I had before. I couldn't just get up and just say, "Oh, I'm just going to grab lunch," or "I'm just going to take this trip or that trip," and it was like a real reality check. Like, oh, I have to be concerned about this little child here. Although I had my husband with me and he was my support and everything, it's just very different. And I think that a lot of times people don't realize, even if you don't have a partner, even if you have a partner, you may still feel that overwhelmed feeling or that the feeling of doubt, like, am I going to be able to navigate my life, my career and everything with, also managing a baby. So I did have my little blues. And thankfully I had a family member who she cared for me when I was a child, and she just was still in the child care business. So she was my nanny for a year, and that was really, really helpful because I was able to get rest when I needed it. I still had my blues, that didn't change it, but it was more manageable because I had her support. So I definitely can relate to the blues part. And then also that whole idea around, I'm a nurse. Should I be really thinking about things in this context, or should I be a little bit more, comfortable with these phases or transitions of, throughout the lifespan? And as much as I've taught this kind of content to pre-licensed nurses, it was really different when it was my own story. So yes, I can relate to that part of that dynamic as well, as far as being a nurse. So the next question I wanted to find out from you is kind of like, let's just go into something that I actually found on your YouTube channel. And I'll just be completely transparent. I was on YouTube searching for people who were just being really honest about what their experience was like being in an NP program. I'm in an NP program right now.
Mhm.
And I wanted to kind of gauge what that was like. And I was on YouTube searching for some content, and there is literally, what I tell you, a handful
Yeah.
of people who will be transparent with you about their experience. Most people will tell you about like what they did to be successful. They'll tell you about how they got through, but they're telling you all the highlights, just, typical social media stuff, just the highlights. And a handful of people will give you some like raw kind of, this is what I was experiencing, anxiety, doubt, fear, whatever that was. And when I came to your channel, the refreshing part of it was, first of all, you were being completely transparent about your journey. When I got to the video where you were talking about your decision to pull out of the program, it was almost like a weight was lifted off of me. Because it was just important for me to see someone that I felt like I could relate to, your value systems, where you were, your focus, your aim, what drove you into Psych NP in particular, that track. And also, you were so raw and realistic about, and, sharing where those doubts and fears were coming from. Like, kind of like, how am I going to navigate being a present mother and also my own personal well-being? Because these programs can be pretty brutal at times. So please just share with me some of that like transparency, and just kind of dig into what made you decide first to go into the program, and then kind of what made you kind of make that decision. I don't think that this is probably the best decision for me to continue with this program right now.
Yeah. Wow. And I really appreciate that. I was very transparent, and I will say, like, I'm kind of answering this question a little out of order, but with social media in general, I just use, YouTube in particular, I use it as a video diary, if you will. And what made me, so with that being said, is it's because it's my diary. I'm talking raw, and it's nice to hear that there's people out there that are looking for the content. Because I remember when I was debating going into the Psych NP program, like you said, Rick, didn't really see a lot on YouTube. Like, I was like, it's the same 5 people, like, so, and then I was like, okay, I guess that means I should share too, And so with that being said, what made me want to go into the Psych NP program was actually a colleague of mine who's a chiropractor. She was like, you'd be a really good nurse practitioner. And she was like, she has her own brick and mortar here in Orlando. Well, in St. Cloud. But anyways, she was just like, yeah, like, just go to school and then you'll have an office here, blah, blah, blah. Like, it was like the perfect thing, right? And I was like, you know what? Maybe I should go back to school. So then I look it up, and like similarly to what you said, I go on YouTube, try to find people that look like me that are talking about this, and I barely see anything. But I was like, you know what? Let me, and so then as I'm looking, because the chiropractor at the time, she wanted me to be a family NP. And something in my spirit was like, you should do psych, because that's what your your business is about, Lesline Does Wellness is, promoting new moms' mental health through the use of yoga. So you should just do psych. So then I find that, psych NP, like that's a thing. I didn't know that was a thing when I was doing nursing school to become a registered nurse. But mind you, that's like over 10 years ago. So like, things change within nursing, right? So, I find psych NP programs and I land on one and I immediately start like really quickly, like it all happens really quick. And then I did all of the coursework. So I want to say that too. I did 80% of the program. And then it was the 20% of the clinical part, which I share in my YouTube. That part it really took me out because it was very hard to find a preceptor. There was that. It was hard to balance like working my full-time job and then doing clinicals. I was like, wait a minute, like I have to do clinicals, which I understand because I am a registered nurse. I know how that goes. But now that I have a family and like I got like all these real responsibilities that I didn't have when I became a registered nurse, I was like, how do people do this? Like, how do mothers that work do this? Like this, and when I say work, I want to also put this here. Stay-at-home moms work as well. Let me preface, moms that work for a corporation, like you work outside of the home. I was like, how? This is hard. And I started just butting heads, if you will, of like, if I'm going to be really, really transparent, I was like getting in trouble at work in the sense of like balancing. Like I wasn't doing all my stuff at work because I'm trying to do clinicals. And then I'm like, crap, I got to take PTO to do my clinicals, running out of PTO. And I was just like, okay, the yogi part of me then started to kind of come up and be like, something is not like this is too much, Lesline. Like this is too much. I pride myself in being somebody that I don't want to say I'm very self-aware, but through yoga, I've learned like when internally something ain't right, and after going through that back and forth, that was probably maybe a month. I was like trying to really push these clinicals. Like I was really trying to get it done. And everything was just block after block after block after block. And I was just like, okay, this is becoming too much, And so after the, block after block after block, I was like, this is too much. And then I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna, I'm gonna pull out. Like, I'm gonna pull out of school. I've never done this before. Like, I'm a very, if I'm gonna start, I've never dropped out of school in any kind of way. And the relief that I had when I made that decision, like, I was just like, oh, and I will say this too. I don't regret the decision I made. The reason, and I answered that already. I wanted to become a psych NP because I thought, and this is where my yoga comes in again, I thought that I needed more. I needed more so that I could help my clients even more, and my clients being new moms, right? And I was like, if I get this one more degree, that'll be the way I can get a funnel of clients, la 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 la. And then I realized, which I also share on my YouTube, I was like, after I realized I needed to pull out of school, like I need to just go back to the basics. Like that's really what God, I feel like, was telling me is like, Lesline, I have given you everything that you need to serve in the way that I need you to serve. You don't need to do more. You just need to continue sharing the same message over and over in different ways, right? And continue to be consistent.
Wow, that is awesome. One of the things that I have to say I really admire about the work that you do is that you recognize that mothers needed that balance. And then for yourself, you also checked within and said, so what do I really need to add this to my plate for the message that I want to deliver, for the impact that I want to have? Do I actually need this on my plate? And I think that oftentimes when we are trying to problem solve for ourselves and the impact that we want to have in our communities, we sometimes think that we have to add more sprinkles, right? We need to put more glitter. We need to have bigger blasts. And the truth is, oftentimes the very things that called us to tap into our talents and our gifts are just like, it's just enough of what we need. Like you actually have everything that you need. The moment that you recognize that you had a gift and a talent you were already at the moment of being prepared.
Yeah.
Like when you actually recognize that you had that talent. But I think that it is a common mistake that many of us make, especially as mothers, when we think about the future of our children and we think about making things, comfortable for them and stable for them and having, that loose change to do little special things with them. Oftentimes we think, if I could squeeze in one more degree, and that will make a huge difference, and then I'll be able to be more impactful in this way, and this will help me balance out this, or maybe I'll have more resources to do this or that.
Yeah.
And again, the sacrifice that we have to make to actually make those things happen, sometimes that's the challenge for us to really accept that, the sacrifice too, and say, if this is truly the sacrifice that I have to make, I don't know if it's going to be worth it, because I don't want my children to suffer. I don't want my mental health to suffer. I don't want my peace to suffer. And I don't want to put that kind of pressure on my family or myself unnecessarily. And also modeling for mothers. I mean, how has your work with mothers shaped your pathway as a nurse?
That's a good question. I can relate to what you said when you were talking about, which I kind of think you said it, but in different ways. It wasn't until I became a mom, I was like, oh my gosh, because I learned this obviously in nursing school. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's a very small section in nursing school, but you learn about the postpartum and stuff. And it's an even smaller section of postpartum mental health, right? Like, now we're hearing more and more things regarding postpartum mental health, which is amazing. But I have so much more empathy. I have so much empathy. I just have so much more empathy for moms, for Black moms. Because it's a lot. It's a lot. We want so much for our children. Like you said already, we want the very best for our children, and we will do anything and everything, even sacrificing our peace, our mental health, our physical health, so that our kids can get the very best. But for what? Because if you're not here, is it really worth it? And that's something I think about on the regular, is I need to make sure that I am on my A game. And it's not every day. It's not, but I need to try my best to be on my A game and show my children what it's like to take care of yourself, because when you take care of yourself, your kids will do the same.
But I guess one of the other questions that I had was really about even navigating clinical. Now, I just want to say this really quickly, because that is a crazy reality. I've been kind of focused on more so getting a preceptor that will do telehealth. And that gets kind of costly, because the more expectations you have with these clinical preceptors is the more expensive it gets.
Yep.
And a lot of these preceptors, right or wrong, have turned this into a very lucrative business.
Yeah.
They can pick up your desperation, and they're like, yeah, I'm going to get you.
Yeah.
So you said you did start clinicals?
I did. Yeah.
Okay, so
yeah.
When you started clinicals, because this is something I don't think a lot of people know, that, and you were on site, I'm assuming.
I was.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Was there always patients there for you to do your clinicals with?
Yes.
Okay. And they took up all the time that you submitted for your clinical hours?
Girl, so I did 2 sites. The first site I did was a drug rehab. So that was nice in the sense of I got all my patients, because the person I was under, she saw a lot of patients. She saw 8 to 10 people a day. That might not sound like a lot, but with all the charting that she had to do,
like a tremendous amount.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So it was like 8 to 10 people she would see a day, and then she has to chart, and like, so that was a really good experience. I had to pay. I had to pay about, what was it? It was like around 1,000 for like the semester, if I'm not mistaken.
Bad. Okay, so she must have had you on like, I don't know, $2 or $3 an hour, a couple dollars an hour.
Yeah, because like,
Okay.
and yeah, and also it's like, I'll say this too, it's like it like you were saying, like I can understand why they charge, because it's like, especially right now with like the influx of people, like I'm gonna become a psych NP, like you have to make sure people are, it sounds, but you have to make sure people are serious about like being under you as a preceptee, right? And so she gave me like she gave me a little nice discount, because she knew my heart and stuff. So but she anyways, I worked with her for a semester. It was great. Like, she was easy to work with, whatever. It wasn't until the second place I went to, which was another type of drug rehab place, because with the school I went to, they were like, I couldn't use the same preceptor, which I know that's not true for every college, but where I went, they were like, you have to, which I get, which I appreciated, but it's really frustrating when you're in it, because they wanted you to get like a wide range of experience. So they're like, you can't repeat your preceptor. You can only repeat your preceptor twice. And I had to do 4 clinicals. So I told my preceptor the first one, I was like, okay, I'll see you in 2 semesters. And she's like, okay. And so then I'm doing the second semester, I find somebody. And then it was like a lot of miscommunication, because what had happened was I was really talking to the social worker person when I should have been talking to the nursing department. But the social worker lady, she was nice to an extent where she's like, okay, I'm still going to help you. And it wasn't until till the end for me that I was like, okay, this is too much back and forth. She took away hours, because she was like, you didn't see patients every like hour that you said you were here. And I was like, okay, that's true, but like, can you still work with me in some kind of way? Like, I work a full time, like, like, I was just like, so that was where I was just like, okay, this is a lot. And then she's like, okay, well, how about this? I'll send you to a different facility within the same entity. She sends me into a different facility, but then it was like I couldn't get all the hours I needed, and oh my God, I try to block a lot of it out, so that's why it might seem very gappy in the story, but it was very frustrating, and it was hard because I am technically in the mental health space with my business. And I realized within the mental health space how a lot of mental health providers work in silos, and that is not good. It's to the collective's detriment, I'm going to say, because I would reach out like, hey, you're a therapist. Do you know a psych NP? Because in my nurse head, that makes sense, right? That like a therapist would be connected to a psychiatric nurse practitioner, as well as a psychiatrist, as well as a psychologist. However, in the real world, that is not true. Everybody head down, just focusing on their patients. And I feel like that's why there's also gaps in care, specifically in mental health care, because it's like the mental health professionals are not connecting in the way that they need to. And so I say all that to say it was very frustrating, because I was like, oh, I'll have a shoe-in because I know all these therapists, and like nobody could help me, because and I'm not talking ill on any of these therapists I know. No, it was just really taxing. Because when I told you, I went through my Rolodex of the people that I'm connected with on social media since building my business. And like they would give me, oh, try this, and then it was like crickets. And it's like, oh, this is why we're suffering. Like, I hate to be dramatic like that, but I'm like, this is why like we are suffering when it comes to mental health, like globally. Like, I'm just gonna put that, because it's like there's a big disconnect with providers.
And you're so true. That's so true. The point you just made there. And if I'm not mistaken, I recall you sharing at the beginning of this conversation that you did have some time working in case management, correct?
Yes. Yep. Mm-hmm.
That's a huge part of it. Because one of the things that case managers do, they're very centralized. Like I actually went into health information management, but I spent most of my years in nursing working in case management. I actually have very few years working in psych in an inpatient facility as a charge nurse. All my other years were working case management, even in leadership roles, but still case management. And one of the things I always tell people about case management is that you connect with so many different people that you really get the sense that you're like this, like the glue, although this patient is central to everything we're doing, you feel that you're really that connector. And with that, again, like you said, you probably were a bit surprised that you had providers working in a capacity where they were not as connected as you assumed that they would be. And then you see how that may actually play out in patient outcomes.
Wow. You said that, I don't mean to cut you off, but that you said that beautifully. See, I'd be like, I don't want to say I'd be discrediting my nursing career, but I need to be better of like bringing that stuff up, because that's exactly what it is. That's exactly why I was so frustrated, because it's like, I'm so used to, when I worked case management, to help, the family or the patient, like, okay, I'm gonna make sure you have boom, 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 A, B, C, D, E, F, G provider, you know what I'm saying? And I would get them that wraparound care that they need. And I would see within the health systems that I worked in that they are connected. Like, it's not perfect, don't get me wrong, but like, I'd be like, oh, okay, well, the neurologist talks to, the PCP, or at least the like in that kind, whatever. But it's just, I thank you for bringing that up. I didn't realize that's why I think the way that I think.
Oh yeah, and there's a reason why I think some nurses go into case management, because every nurse doesn't like case management. Some nurses go into case management for a little bit and they're like, too much calls, too much connecting the dots. I don't want to be that involved. And then people like me, I'm like, the case management shoe is just such a comfortable shoe for me. In fact, even when I earned my certifications, I still continue to work in that capacity, influencing the health information management through case management. Like, that's still very much the area of, if I'm going to be doing direct patient care, that's still the space that I would work in. You could not find me on a med-surg floor, ICU, CCU. No, that's not my space. Case management is my space.
Yeah, no, I feel that.
So what do you see as your future impact in self-care and wellness? The self-care wellness space. So I know you spoke on some of the work you have done, and as far as the purpose, right, behind the work you've done. But what do you see as some future projects or future goals you have for your services?
Yeah, that's a good question. I definitely want to work more in the corporate space. So doing more corporate wellness for small to large scale businesses. And because I also, on top of within my yoga services, there's the sound healing, the somatic breathing that I offer. So I want to provide that to corporations. Yeah. And then I also want to continue to grow my YouTube channel. So I have my YouTube channel, personal YouTube, which is at Lesline Pittman, which is like my video diary and all of that. But then I have my Yoga with Lesline YouTube, where that is solely dedicated to providing yoga to new moms. And when I talk yoga, I want to be clear that I'm not just talking doing a headstand or being flexible. I'm really talking more so, which I've realized is the somatic practices, and somatic meaning just how you can use your breath and mindfulness to relax and to be a better you. So I'm providing you relaxation techniques versus the physical aspects is really my niche of yoga. I also just launched my ebook for new moms, which is the Grounded Mom ebook. So that is something that I'm definitely pushing. I'll be pushing a lot these next few months. And I also have my free yoga challenge over on my Yoga with Lesline YouTube page. What else? Hopefully doing more retreats, like not me hosting retreats, but me being like one of the offerings for other people's retreats. Yeah, those are some of the projects.
Where's the best way for us to contact you? I know you mentioned YouTube. I know you have the Instagram for your personal and for your yoga services. Do you have any other way you would prefer to be contacted? I see that you also have your website.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. Yeah, so my website, leslinepittman.com, that's LeslinePittman.com/contact. So go there on the contact page and just fill out that form. And that will also give you a better idea of the services that I offer. So that's like the best way to contact me. That's also like, it's just the best way to contact me is what I prefer. Yeah.
So I just want to thank you again for your time. I want to thank you for your transparency. I will be including images here of your website, the contact form on the contact page of your website, also your YouTube channel and your other social media sites. I'll actually post here so that anyone who is listening, who's interested in having services that help them with meditation. It sounds like you're focused on that mindfulness, that inner peace, tapping into that inner peace.
Yes.
So I want my listeners who value that, it's so important that in this world where we're inundated with so many different negative thoughts and bad news and pressures to do this, that, and everything, a lot of times we're not paying attention to like the here and now, and that's a big, huge part of mindfulness, to be focused on the here and now and the present, and kind of clearing your thoughts from your mind of all those thoughts that kind of get you caught up in these, I like to kind of call them like a barrel of thoughts. You just got to capture a thought or capture a word, and then you're just stuck there. And oftentimes, I know I said I was going to wrap up. Oftentimes I find that when we are not in our like mindful space, we tend to grapple and focus on some of the most negative thoughts. Yes. I almost never find that or should say never, seldom I find myself stuck in a happy thought. I'm usually stuck in like either anger or stuck in, it could be anger that's being dressed up in something else, but it could be very much like rooted in, because side note, I started working on tapping into that. I used to work with this psychologist who he studied the sword. He also is a Black psychologist who has adopted a lot of mindfulness and like Buddhist practices into what he does, the psychotherapy. But one of the things he always focuses on is kind of tapping into those feelings inside of you, and not necessarily saying that it's coming from somewhere external, but look at the thoughts that we have about ourselves and how that kind of poisons us sometimes, just having these bad thoughts about ourselves, and how that sometimes can be rooted in anger. And therefore letting that anger go, releasing that, connecting with the people around us through these positive bonds and relationships, understanding that we are not a singular, person, but more so like a finger on a hand or like a wave in the bigger ocean. So I'm working on that right now. And full transparency, it's kind of hard to do that when you're in school and you have the demands of, just program demands. Some of the instructors are not necessarily, I always say this, some of these instructors are just there for money. Just like every job, any job, somebody can say, I'm just there for the money. Some of these instructors feel like they're just there for the check and not necessarily there to help develop you. And so there's a lot of self teaching and kind of, trying to figure out how you're going to get through. And then, if you create a community, you could probably create a space where you can connect with others in the same boat, just like how we're connecting right now. But a lot of that requires you really being honest with how anxiety shows up for you, how
Right.
fear shows up for you, how pressure shows up for you, and having like real steps, like the things that you are offering. They're so important, especially for Black moms. So I just so appreciate what you're offering. And I want to actually leave this time for you to give any closing statements or any words of encouragement.
Yeah, I wanted to that was all of that you said is so beautiful. And there's a book that I'm going to recommend, and I'm saying that book so I don't forget. But before I recommend this book, going back into what you're saying, because that's what I was going to bring up, is it's so important that whoever's listening to this, that you understand how to be mindful of your emotions without judgment. And I'll say that again, it's so important that you be aware of your emotions, your feelings without judgment. And I talk about this in my ebook as well, but I'm also going to recommend this other book. But when you come with that approach with mindfulness, you'll be more gentle with yourself, like knowing like that these feelings and these emotions, like it's nothing about good or bad. And I put quotes when I say that. It's just like it is like you're feeling angry. Okay, like what's underneath that anger, right? Because a lot of the most of the time, it's not anger. Under the anger is sadness, or you're scared, right? Like there's all these emotions, but how can you get to that if you don't know how to practice mindfulness, if you don't know how to be self-aware? And that's why I love teaching this, because I just want people, because people don't have that opportunity to just self-reflect. And I remember when after I had my daughter, and it was yoga, it was mindfulness that saved me, because I caught the thought. Like I always think of thoughts like you put them in clouds. That's what I tell my clients. You put each thought in a cloud as best as you can, right? I'm not a good mom. Okay, throw that in a cloud. Oh, I have laundry to do. Throw that in a cloud, right? So as you throw all these thoughts into a cloud, and what I did that day is I saw this thought come up, a very bad thought, and I stopped myself. Because of my yoga practice, I was able to stop myself of, I forget what I was doing. I was just standing in the kitchen, and I was like, whoa, that's not me. That thought is not me. And I immediately went on my phone, looked up a therapist, and was able to connect with a therapist. But unfortunately, what happens with people, you'll hear these stories, and there's so much judgment under these stories, but you hear these stories of these new moms, these women that have, after they have kids, and you hear, they not to be morbid, but, and I'm gonna end on a high note, but they killed the baby, then they killed themselves, right? And people are like, how could they do that? Oh my gosh, right? And I'm not saying mindfulness is the answer. I'm not saying that what I do is gonna cure, but what I'm saying is if these women were able to just identify how they feel, give themselves a moment to breathe, to practice that internal work, we probably could have less of those occurrences happening, right? So the last thing I'll say is, there's this book, because with the anger, I was like, oh, there's this book that one of my mentors recommended to me. It's called Anger, Wisdom for Cooling the Flames by Thich, Nhat, Hanh. After I read it, it's very short, but it's a book that discusses anger, and it has those Buddhist, the Buddhist wisdom behind anger, and how you can really cultivate and understand your anger and not be afraid of anger. Because I feel like when people think of anger, you're like, oh my gosh, I can't be angry. And then especially if you're a Black woman, you're like, I don't want that trope of the angry Black woman. So then you don't even allow yourself to be angry, right? And then that's not good, because then you're just suppressing these emotions, which then can turn into physical ailments, right? Like, it's so interesting how these emotions can then affect us physically, but not a lot of, we're coming around the men. People are slowly realizing how it's all connected, but Yeah, that I say all of that to say I am very passionate about yoga and helping new moms. It's not a cure, but it will help you just be a better person for yourself first, and then it just oozes to everybody else around you.
Thank you. And while I don't have an official book club, because typically I don't really focus as much as I should on this topic, but there's also a book that I'm reading now. Actually, my psychologist friend from years ago, he actually passed, but he wrote great books. But one of the books that a passage in the book, he actually covers anger. And the book actually is All the Rage, Buddhist Wisdom and Anger and Acceptance. So along with your book and this book, I will also put the books, the link for the books in the description, and also images of the book here, so that you would be able to tap into these resources. Hopefully you find this discussion along with these resources. And also, more importantly, please check out Lesline's website. Please check out her Instagram, check out her YouTube channels, because this is what we actually need.
If you are interested in learning how to advance your nursing career by leveraging your nursing knowledge in a non-traditional role, enroll in our transition coaching program and download a free copy of our My Transition Journal today.
We want to hear from you. Schedule a free consultation or send us an email at advancednurses@acd4n.com or visit our websites www.advancednurses.info or www.acd4n.com.